Hey there, good morning. It's 6:58 a.m. It is Thursday morning, May 8th. I am getting up and getting ready to start my project. Okay. I had a bit of an episode last night. I came down, I had downloaded some information. Well, actually, I didn't download it. I was creating a new spread, um, tarot spread, with cards, and I had inadvertently stumbled upon some information, that led me to understand that I have been exploited by my birth mother, who has no legal reason to be in my life whatsoever. But anyway, that was on a video that I made. It's called Freeloaders. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. I will put it in the description box. So, I've been unwinding this story for quite a while and, piecing it together. And, I'm very unhappy with these selfish and greedy people. And, I had mentioned my feelings about religion before, and religion is something that I had made up in my mind a long time ago that I didn't want anything to do with. And I understand when I was dealing with this particular group that was targeting me, who was manning my channels, infiltrating my social media at the instruction of Rex Laverne. He he was dealing with a lot of delusions. I mean, by the very fact that he was somebody who took a picture of the apparition, and he was also looked upon as a leader by this particular group, at least in the initial period where they were formulating this group, and people were plotting against me. Okay. Um, Rex Laverne got very egotistical and big-headed because, like I said, this is what happens a lot of times when people get into. Now, Rex was not an official leader. He had no official title that gave him any sort of access or any right to manage my career. He had no right to touch anything of mine. Now, like I said, I ended up working for Rex Laverne. Uh, I ended up working for Rex Laverne. That was my last job that I had, right? And he gave it to me. He hired me as some pathetic form of compensation after this person robbed me and doled out my money to people who had no right to have any access to my funds, okay? And, he was somebody who was mentally ill, okay? And I had talked about what this in one of my other videos. I don't even know if I uploaded it, but yeah, I come to understand that he was mentally ill, which I kind of figured that anyway. Some people do dishonest acts, steal from people, out of desperation or whatever, but he literally had a sense of entitlement. And there is no logical explanation for why he would feel entitled to have anything to do with me at all. I mean, anything. Okay, there's no reason why he would think that he should have, no logical reason why he would think or should think that he could have access to my money, access to anything that I own, like my social media accounts, nothing. Okay, but he was using religion. The religion gave him the idea that God was more. And okay, I will say that yes, okay, when you think about terms of God having more power than man, who like versus God versus the government or a country, okay, I would say since God is a heavenly figure, he has more, or I don't like to say he or she, the universal forces or God or however you want to look at it is, has all these supernatural abilities. None of this would exist if there was no formulation or there was no God, right? But when we're talking about, we're talking about religion, which is not the same as God. Religion is people's expression, their traditions, their culture of how they see God, okay? And so, he got too pumped up with this idea that he had some sort of entitlement. A lot of it was fueled by his affiliation with white, what do you call it, nationalist type ideas, and then also the fact that he had some sort of religion, okay? And because he had very limited understanding of the outside world, okay, meaning uh, that religion is not the law or the what do you call it, the platform that people are expected to adhere to in the United States. Okay, so he got all these people together, and ended up stealing not just my money, but there's also other celebrities who are wiped out. Okay, I've been working on my project, on different parts of my project at different times. Like, I was working on the narration. Most of my project, the time that I've been spending on it, is writing out scripts, okay? Because I am narrating my scripts, and then also some of these scripts are being written into the PDF that goes along with the videos, okay? This particular video I'm working on is called Laying the Foundation, and this is what I'm discussing is the moral reset in it. And I'm going over, behavioral traits, certain behavioral traits that can get people in trouble legally. I'm also talking about, reminding people what the definition of what a parent is. You know what I mean? I'm talking about things like, our course and journey in life, like what we should expect from the school system. I'm actually going to be talking about marriage in this. You know why? Because this right here is supposed to inform society about certain things that go on. For example, what is a marriage license? What constitutes a marriage in the state of California? You know what I mean? And because this happened to me, and I want to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. Okay, I'm talking about these things. I'm talking about things that happen or encounter, how to deal with rude people, and me talking about like the psychological behavior of certain people, like me talking about certain forms of mental illness. I'm providing a link to a list of mental illness, okay? Because it's not really the mental illness. I'm not trying to diagnose people or encourage other people to diagnose people. Mental illness manifests in social settings through the behaviors, okay? So like, certain people might act rudely, impulsively, or whatever, and that could be that can fall under just about any mental illness, or not even necessarily a mental illness. Sometimes people are just having a bad day and they're being rude and inconsiderate. Okay, but whatever the case is, it's all basically boils down to behavior. So Rex was a mentally ill person. Okay, I had mentioned that the last few days that I was around him, he just seemed very, very odd, and coming off like his behavior was very strange. And to me, if I don't know, it just seemed like if I was so dishonest like that, I would feel ashamed of myself. You know what I mean? I would feel very ashamed of myself. But he was acting, carrying on like nothing was going on, and uh, what I identifying his delusion. There is an actual name for this in psychology, okay? And a lot of, cookie cutter psychologists don't really pick up on these sort of things, but whatever. I am referring to apocalyptic delusions, okay? And let me give you the definition. The apocalyptic delusions is the profound belief that an imminent catastrophic event, such as the end of the world, is upon us. This intense conviction can dramatically shape an individual's behavior and lifestyle, often leading to overwhelming anxiety and drastic preparations for the expected calamity. The psychological grip of such a belief can profoundly alter how one perceives reality and interacts with the world. Now, there's a lot of people who had something similar throughout history, okay? I don't think I uploaded the video I made a couple of days ago, but I remember in 1975, which is a year after we moved into the house in Lancaster, my father started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, okay? And a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses believed that the end of the world was coming in 1975, okay? And that wasn't just something that they kind of put in their mind and thought about, like, oh yeah, the end of the world's going to be coming soon, because a lot of religions believe that, but they don't go all out and quit their jobs, sell their possessions, this sort of stuff. But there were some Jehovah's Witnesses who did that, right? And, 1976 rolled around and they realized they were duped. And some people ended up leaving the Jehovah's Witness organization. Okay. And then I remember in 2012, I was um, I was at work and I stumbled upon one of those news pages on my email, not email, yeah, my news a news like a the news reel or whatever, something like that. And it caught my eye, and it was this article about this man named Harold Camping. Harold Camping was in charge of a congregation and led a lot of people to believe that the end of the world was happening. And they did pretty much the same thing that the Jehovah's Witnesses did in 1975. They quit their jobs, they sold their property, they, uh, stopped investing or whatever. They basically were prepared and wiped their own selves out of their own resources so that they were going to have this end of the world thing. Rex Laverne was promoting some sort of ideology of not just the end of the world, but that they were superior because they were of this belief system. This is a very dangerous thing to do, but it's very common for people in cults. Okay, one of the things that cults usually do is request that their members sign over their worldly possessions to the leader or something along those lines. So I am creating a glossary of um, psychological issues or negative behaviors. But even though I don't have the ability to do like programming on a computer, so where people are viewing the moral reset, they can just click on the definition and find it. You know what I mean? But I am underlining the words in my PDF, and then that tells you that please refer to the glossary if you want the definition. So yeah, I would say that a lot of work is going into this project, and it does mean a lot to me. I deal with a lot of depression, which prevents me from narrating the way that I would like to. Um, but yeah, that was my concern about Rex Laverne, and then the group that was around it. Because I will tell you, I know that my siblings, my adoptive siblings, were a part of this. I was persecuted a lot when I was growing up for studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, having an interest in the Bible. They didn't like that. Okay. But I don't ever recall like my family ever trying to convert me to Mormonism. You know what I mean? So I'm assuming that these Mormons were working behind the scenes, with my family, like, talking to my brother and my sisters, behind my back, you know what I mean? Which I thought was very strange growing up. But this must be. I know that when in the 1990s, when I was living in yeah, I was still in the Antelope Valley area at that time. I was bouncing around between like Roseman and California City, those areas. Wherever the rent was cheap, Maria was going. Anyway, so, but I do remember like my brother was living in places like, Arizona, close to the area of like Utah and that kind of stuff. And I do know that he was uh, associating with Mormon people. And I do recall him being close friends with another Mormon, okay, a Mormon person. And I do remember the holiday dinner that my sister had at her house. My brother came, he brought his friend and his mother. His friend brought his mother, who brought a tape of, I guess, the Mormon choir, the Tabernacle choir that she was a part of. And I believe it featured Gladys Knight, okay. Anyway, I I'm shocked to see that my family were conspiring against me. Okay, and see, this is the kind of stuff that that makes it or identifies this group as a cult behavior. It's a cult. Okay, and so when they couldn't use enough Mormons, then they started spreading out and using other groups of people. You know what I mean? Who they'll use anybody. Just like a lot of Nazis this might be a white supremacist organization, right? But they'll use black people, Asian people, or whatever to promote their agenda through their covert operation. And yeah, it sounds like, are you kidding, Maria? But yes, when I was talking about gang stalking and all this stuff in the beginning when I first made my channel, I know people weren't, they were participating in it, and they weren't quite putting the two and two together, like, oh, we're actually a part of it. This is what's actually going on. But this was what was going on. Yeah, and so anyway, some forms of psychosis and mental disorders within an individual, just one individual. Some people think about or ask questions like, is mental health uh, 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 contagious? Okay, this is one of the reasons what made it a stigma. You know what I mean? Mental health used to have a stigma to it. Okay, and I will say that some forms of mental illness, some forms of mental illness or mental bad behaviors, right, can be contagious. Let me go into the next slide and explain what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm referring to group psychosis, and let me give you the definition of what group psychosis is. It's it's a shared psychotic disorder that occurs when individuals in close relationships adopt the delusions of a dominant member suffering from a psychotic disorder. This alarming phenomenon often emerges in isolated or high-stress environments, such as families or cults, where the overpowering beliefs of one individual can profoundly sway and distort the perceptions of others. Isn't that amazing? Okay. So I understand these things, okay, and this is what happened, okay. Rex Byrne got everyone excited. He presented himself as a leader, okay. He acted as if God was on their side. This appealed to their ego because it made them feel like, oh, this is a righteous thing, all right. And then the more people who bought into what Rex Byrne was saying, the more power that he appeared to have. And the group got out of control. They developed a form of psychosis, right? Because they were excited off of his energy, off of everything that he was promising these people, which he, was a part of this network that, gave people jobs and did all kinds of, exchanges and stuff. So this whole powerful cabal in their mind felt as like, they felt empowered by it. So they experienced group psychosis. And this is what gave them the idea that they were invincible, that they had the right to take anything and everything that anyone ever created that wasn't even theirs. Okay, so this is what happened to the celebrities, and I ended up taking my money as well. Of course I'm angry. I'm very angry, but I'm explaining this to people because this kind of stuff happens throughout history. And sometimes, it can be televised, it gets reported in the media. But Harold Camping wasn't the only person who where things ended up, tragically. When we think about the other cult member, I think that the Haley Bopp guy. Now, these people were very extreme. They ended up committing suicide. This group, okay. People need to be warned about cults, and this is something they don't talk about in school, okay. They don't tell you about these sort of things. I don't even know if, like, some of these people who call themselves psychologists or whatever, actually study this sort of stuff in schools or whatever. But they need to be aware. In order for their skills that they acquired in school to be of help or benefit to them, they should know these things. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, the group that I was just talking about, it was called Heaven's Gate. It was led by Marshall Applewhite. Okay, he encouraged people to commit suicide in 1997. There was a massive suicide at that time. And then, of course, I had mentioned when I was a little kid, I had an interest in Jim Jones, right? I had a huge interest in Jim Jones. And, for a little kid to take an interest in that story, I think I was maybe 7 or 8 or something, like somewhere around that age when my dad had a book about it and he was talking about it, and it really intrigued me. It got my attention. I was very interested in the story of Jim Jones. He was the one who ran the cult called the People's Temple. And you know how people talk about don't drink the Kool-Aid? That's where that expression comes from. Do not drink the Kool-Aid. I'm not taking. Or if somebody tempts you, you say, "Oh, I'm not going to have that Kool-Aid," or something like that. He, convinced people to end their lives, and they ended their life by being drinking poison Kool-Aid. Okay. Um, he was responsible for the Jonestown massive suicide. Okay. And then we had the Branch Davidians, right? I forgot his name. But anyway, that was known for the Waco siege that occurred, and that was kind of a big story as well. So these things get mentioned in the public, but nobody really pays attention or takes the necessary steps to warn people about this kind of stuff, what to look for. You know what I mean? And it usually starts with a charismatic leader, somebody who sways public opinion, right? And then they start developing, a sense of entitlement. They start being empowered. And don't get me wrong, there are some, leaders that are meant to empower people. You should have a leader that makes you feel good and gives you some sort of hope. But these people were, asking for them to turn over their possessions. These people would do very isolating tactics. Just about all of these groups that I'm talking about here, one of their main focuses were isolating these people, making sure that they had control over all their members. A lot of these people, like for example, not the Branch Davidians, but I'm referring to like the People's Temple. They walked away from their families. A lot of these people walked away from their families and just followed Jim Jones wherever he went. Cut off, and he encouraged it. Cut off members. If they don't believe like I do, but cut them off, whatever. They thought that they were the ones who were, and the same thing with Applegate. Marshall Applewhite. Same thing. Isolating from their families, walking away from their families, and not having any sort of outside sources or resources to help them. Okay, people need to understand and be warned about what to look for in cults, and this is going to be added into the moral reset. Okay, and I've always kind of got irritated when I dealt with you know uh, the religious mindset. And like I said, I know I was attacked, or criticized a lot in school. And I noticed that this Mormon group that was working and talking to my family behind my back would use other kids who did not necessarily belong to the Mormon church. So these people have been using people for the longest time. So Rex Laverne really isn't anything new. He's just a new member on board with this group, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's been going on for a very, very long time. I'm going to go on to the next slide. You know, I just mentioned in the other slide about how I was interested in the Jim Jones story and cult-related topics when I was a kid. I'm now starting to understand that the reason why is because of uh, my past lives. You know what I mean? I must have dealt with cults and having to deal with their targeting me in previous lives. Okay, because I'm a chosen one. I'm chosen. Like they could not understand why I had the ability to have all these gifts, right? And they were jealous. That's why they formulated a lot of religions formulated their stuff off of my foundations, okay? And this is why, like how they hurt other members who are of royal descent, by targeting them, like they did the wardrobe lady, and then distorting some of these celebrities the way that they do. Extreme envy. Okay, it's just absolutely disgusting and just mind twisting the shit that they do. Anyway, I remember when I used to encounter people, and see, this is another reason why I'm really closed off, because they have sent. I swear, I feel like my life is just like over the top. It really is. But they sent their flying monkeys. They would send their flying monkeys to me, and they would always try to convert me. Right? They want to convert you so that they could, change your behavior, so that I don't offend them by being better than them. That's pretty much the way I look at it, especially at this point, right? Anyway, so I remember, you hear a lot of their rhetoric. They tell people what to say. Some of these people are just like, um, uh, carrying their message or carrying their form of indoctrination, okay? Because we're talking about cult-minded people. So I remember, like, I met this one guy, and, some of these people, they come off so arrogant. This is what just really gets me, right? Because they believe that they have, the truth, or that God is on their side. I mean, their arrogance is just like mind-blowing, right? So this guy was trying to convince me to be a member of his church. I will never forget it. He was sitting there all cocky and just like obnoxious, really. And he said, well, he was talking about his faith, and he said something like, that expression or whatever, the phrase, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Now, what this man was saying in the last few days have been like circulating in my mind. You know why? Because this is so ironic. This man is probably a part of this group who probably lost a bunch of stuff and was misled. Okay, these people have no evidence or proof that their leaders are of God, right? But they're willing to do it mainly because of the financial resources that are being offered at the time, or they're doing it for status, or to belong to a group, or whatever. No, these people have led people to their doom. Okay, I also remember another lady who was always bragging about, she felt very boastful about her being affiliated with the Mormon Association. She was talking about how she knew of a lady who was not Mormon, right? And one of her family members died. And this lady was like all confident about her belief in Mormonism. She's like, by me being a Mormon, I have hope. I'm like, wait, what? Now I'm starting to think about hope, to come back here on the earth. You have been duped. You have listened to the talk and the word of the devil. Okay? Your religion likes to mess with souls and manipulate stuff. You're not benefiting by coming back to the earth in a chaotic place. This place is chaotic and very damaging. Okay? But anyway, that's not to say, the idea of the New World or the New World Order, the New Earth or whatever, like I said, this is going to be such a fun project to put together, okay? But, I'm not saying that people can't have a decent Earth platform, but how you're going to wipe out complete evil or that kind of stuff, like to where people are perfect, I'm not sure about that. But anyway, yeah, people get swayed into believing a lot of stuff, okay? And a lot of times it's because it plays on people's emotions. People want to affiliate with things that make them feel good. That's completely normal, okay? And this is what they use. Some people use this sort of tactic in churches. This is why we call these people charismatic. They can stir emotions. They can get you excited about things. They can perk you up. They can do all these sort of things. And they're mind manipulators. They're mind manipulators. There's certain tactics that certain religious or cult groups use to keep people, in submission. Like, sometimes they used to send people off to retreats and stuff like this. And they would, like, do things like sound deprivation, repetitive drumming. Some cults actually work in these sort of manners, right? Because they really want to indoctrinate you. Okay? And it can be very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to say a couple of things about the Swan Song Manifesto. When it comes to putting my logo on everything, just by my newsletter saying the Swan Song Manifesto, that's enough. That's my newsletter, okay? What is the Swan Song Manifesto? Why is it? Who it all relates to me. That's what I am, the Swan Song Manifesto. Or leaving is the Swan Song Manifesto. And like I already told you, I already broke down the definition of what the Swan Song Manifesto is, okay? All the Patreon videos that I've made, I do believe have my Swan Song Manifesto, my little guides and stuff like that. That is the Swan Song Manifesto. That is my stuff. That is my stuff, okay? I had mentioned, my birth mother, who has no legal ties to me. I was offended by what I found out last night. And then I woke up this morning. I woke up early this morning, right? And guess what the first thing on my mind was? Just take a guess. Oh, yeah, I was pretty pissed. So, yeah, my spirit of who C.B. Braganza or all the other lives of being reincarnated has not changed. And I believe that this must have infuriated the Mormon church, because what they want to do is they want you to be a part of their religion. And the answer is no. I do not want their religion. Their religion to me is of the devil. Sorry, and it is what it is, okay? And there's a lot of, but it's, there's times where, like, maybe a religion, uh, I'm not going to go that deep into it, okay? But, that doesn't mean that this group cannot be, like, change their doctrines or whatever. But, yeah, I believe that, the very fact that they thought that it was in their right to do, collaborate with the Nazi thing and all that stuff, that's just like, and it's horrifying. But I did recall a conversation that I had with a Jewish woman one time, okay? And I was just thinking about this, and I had mentioned before in my newsletter about how the Jewish community was, like, pretty mortified when they found out that Mormons were performing baptismals of the dead on some of their ancestors, okay? Because it's like, these people obviously have their customs or their traditions, and they want, once they're dead, they want to be dead. They don't want to be messed with, okay? But I do understand this idea of, what do you call it, burden babies, how these kids get introduced. Like, I'm referring it to it as burden babies, okay, because they taking on a burden so that they can get some sort of benefit, okay. So, like, the idea would be, like, for, like, to get a good job or whatever, they'll go ahead and maybe take an ancestor, have the ancestor cloned, right, have the ancestor cloned. Like me, I'm related to my James Gordon, right? So James Gordon would have me cloned and then raise me, right? And then receive certain benefits, right? This is what I'm talking about. These, what do you call it? Burden babies. Babies that, are clones and they get to live in with a family, is what I'm saying. Okay, and then we have these people who, I had brothers and sisters who always saw me as different, right? And they thought that, oh, the reason why, she was cloned is because she's a sinner, because she was a witch or something along those lines. Let me tell you, no, this is the story. This is the story. This is what happened. No, I have always been of God. This group, okay, who has been targeting me, are of the devil, period. Period. Okay? They are the imitators. It's like I talked about the demiurge and the archons imitate real life. Okay? This is why they clone people. There is no semen. There is no, whatever. We are clones. Okay? And some people say, that's terrible to say about yourself. Hey, you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. Okay? Just because I was created out of something evil doesn't make me evil. I'm recognizing what this is. Okay? And that doesn't mean that cloning in itself cannot be a benefit to certain, or in certain causes. Like, maybe if you had a close-knit family that cared and you end up losing a loved one and you want that person back, maybe that's a good thing. I know that's what Jehovah's Witnesses believe. This is how, their loved ones are going to be brought back, okay? And they're going to live forever on paradise on earth through the cloning system. That's got to be that way, okay? And I believe that the original Jehovah's Witness Foundation understood this, okay? And that's fine. I guess I can do that. But the thing is that clones tend, the way things are, because the world is so corrupt, they unfortunately, do not get the best households, or or kids in foster care. A lot of people use other people for all kinds of financial exploitation. Okay? Just like welfare mothers that I was talking about, that would, like, literally talk about how much more they can get in their welfare monthly payments if they have another kid. And then talking about trying to encourage me to do the same thing. It's like, this stuff's normal to them. They normalize the slavery of other people. I will tell you, some of these people who have kids on welfare, when the kid gets 18 years old, they'll start using that kid's credit. And the kid doesn't even have a chance in life. Okay, because you have to have decent credit in order to get a house and all this other stuff. Well, their resources have already been taken up by their parents. Okay, so that kid was used for their financial resources. They exploited that child. Okay, and in this case, I've been exploited. Now, I will tell you, I can tell you that my dad really did. I loved my father. He was a good man. Okay, but I understand it's difficult to get by. So he did have me cloned. But I will tell you, I know that my father spent some time with C.B. Berganza in his past life, and I do believe that he had affection for me. I believe that. This is one of the reasons why I have communication with my father to this very day. Yes, I communicate with James Gordon. And I do recall, like, he must have been letting me know that he's been around me before I knew about this apparition, because when I left Murray Family Farms, the very day that I was terminated from Murray Family Farms, I remember having a spiritual experience as I was walking down my hallway. Okay, my, what do you call it? My smoke detector started acting weird. And for a few days after that, I started having communication with the smoke detector, and I would get answers from it. That's another video for another time. Also, when I did a candle meditation with 3 different candles, I was being warned that I would have people like working against me. It was huge, okay? I had 3 candles, 3 red candles burning in a row, right? 2 of them broke. That is a very unusual thing. So I now realize, okay, that my father's presence had been around me for a very long time, okay? I'm very grateful for that. Okay, which tells me that we have spirit bodies. Okay, I understand we have spirit bodies, and some people through the cloning system are reusing our spirits and coming back on this earth. Okay, it's wicked. It is very wicked. So I'm not in favor of cloning. I'm not in favor of it. Okay, why? Because of the exploitation. Hopefully, in the future, like I said, if the vision of what Charles Taze Russell and many other Jehovah's Witnesses, or people, he wasn't actually a formal Jehovah's Witness. He was actually called the Bible Students, and then it later formed into Jehovah's Witnesses. If this is the case, well, then you know what? Then so be it. But the evil needs to be removed from the earth before something like that happens. Okay, because people tend to take advantage of people who do not have strong family foundations, and this is the truth. This is why it's wrong to treat family members the way that people do in the current life, how we are right now. You know what I mean? Because there's no love. Okay, there is no love. Anyway, as far as the Swan Song Manifesto newsletter, I would really like to have people reach out to me, and perhaps maybe they are in their own way, because I've been seeing a lot of interesting advertisements on Facebook, things that I would be interested in putting into the Swan Song Manifesto. I think that's great, because I do think that people are communicating with me through Facebook, like contacting, reaching out, being friends on Facebook. That's as far as it really goes, okay? And that's fine, okay? I don't really mind that, and that my newsletter is making a difference, okay? But I would prefer to man it, meaning that's my newsletter. If people have specific questions, I am going to continually put my email and contact information on there. It is my newsletter. It is my last time to, talk about my last journey. This is my last journey in life, okay? My older years, how I'm progressing, and also share, blessings and encouragement with other people, and my story with other people through the Swan Song Manifesto. That is personal. It's personal. And then people just like suck up my stuff. That is very painful for me. Okay, thinking that I'm sitting here, getting food stamps, and then asking community partner action or whatever this or charitable organization is. Hey, can you help me out with my bill when I could have paid off my bills? See, let me just do a comparison really quick. Okay, when we were talking about my Patreon money, okay? Let's just say, for example, I made $5 million, okay? I made $5 million versus going to a job, okay? With my $5 million on the money that I would make, I would be able to pay off all my bills. And I would be able to buy a house. And with a job, I have to put up with other people's abuse, have to deal with other people's personalities, another person's environment, whatever, right? I have, with my $5 million, I could be at home and doing things and other projects and living my life comfortably. And for the next few years, at 54 years old, I'm going to have to get up every morning and 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 get up and go to work in the winter months as I get older, and blah 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 until I drop dead. See, these people are evil. Okay, I have opportunities to get myself and improve my life, and they took it upon themselves to steal my stuff. That's bullshit. Okay, and then pretending, oh, that this is all, we're deserving of it. We're the ones who are blessed. We're the ones who are blessed. There is nothing wrong with a person who to make money. Okay, there is not. I have, if I have, it's not like, I'm sitting here doing spells and receiving shit. No, I actually have talent. I actually have good ideas. That's what it is. That is what it is. That is what it is. I'm blessed with that talent. And I have the right to make money from that talent. Okay? You're evil. Okay? Rex Laverne was evil. Diana Ross is evil. Anybody who also thought that this was okay is evil. Okay? Evil. So hopefully you'll learn from this lesson, and you will learn more in the moral reset. Okay, let me see if there's anything else I want to say before I wrap this video up. Okay, let me think. Okay, I'm glad that other people understand that I'm taking a little bit more time on the moral reset. There's just times where I just really fall into depression. I really just feel like, or if it's not depression, I'm getting sucked into another, what do you call it, like intuitive message. The messaging that's coming through, the information that's coming through is letting me know, and I need to know. You know why? Because I need closure. I need closure. You know what I mean? Something told me, like, this is one of the reasons I started making cards, like last night on my bed. I wanted to make a special spread, and hopefully, if I complete it, I haven't completely been done yet, right? But if I want to make a special spread, and hopefully I might put it in my newsletter, right? Well, I had made a few cards, and as I was like moving the cards, certain ones were popping up, right? And then I'm like, oh shit, like, what are you talking about? And I realized, oh my gosh, these cards are telling me about my birth mother. And then I found out that she was taking my money. Oh my God, So yeah, I'm somebody who has the gifts of occult science. You know what I mean? And I also have the gift of being and I have the right to make a living. I have the right to make a living. If I have the skills and the ability to make millions of dollars, then I have that bill, and that nobody has the right to prevent me from doing that. No one has the right to do that. You know what I mean? So this is why I'm saying religion, needs to know its place. It's in their churches, it's in their tabernacles, it's in their what do you call it? Their kingdom halls or whatever, and it stays there. And it can go into neighborhoods if they want to prophesize, but you should stay out of the workplace. Okay, this is why it's a law. You don't discriminate based on those reasons. And see, this is exactly what happened. And I hope people remember what happened. What else? There's a lot of people who do regret, and there's a lot of people who I get the intuitive messages. There's a lot of people who are like, we wish we would have listened to you. But see, Rex Laverne just thought that everything that I said was a form of competition. It's not competition. It's not competition. What other? There's a lot of support for me, and I do appreciate that. What else? Oh, it looks like my mom's spirit's like running around. Okay, yeah, I understand. There are newsreels about me, like MSN newsreels and other mainstream notifications. See, I do not. It blows my mind how they can manipulate that kind of stuff. Okay, and I also get the message that yes, the Constitution will always be upheld without question. It is the foundation of the United States of America. And also, I get this message that my skills are proven and that my expertise is highly sought. Well, I wish that I can hurry up and find a job, and I hopefully that it is something that is going to resonate with me. And I hope that I have a decent relationship with my employer and it's not going to be a nightmare. It has been hell for me. It has been absolutely hell for me, I also want to say, I know that some people get starstruck, and, there's certain people that I find, absolutely adorable that I cherish because they are associated with good memories, okay? But, I'm not somebody who is in love with the ideas of celebrities. You know what I mean? Like, because I understand there's a lot of exploitation in this industry or that industry or whatever. And given the fact that a lot of these celebrities were possibly burden babies, meaning, burden babies, they probably didn't get the best environment. Some of these people are, what do you call it? I'm going to call it neglect, okay? If you grew up with a mother and a father or in a family setting, right? and you grow up ignorant, and you grow up, yeah, you grow up ignorant, like not knowing certain things. That means that your parents didn't pay you any attention. They never bothered to discipline you. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why they're very open to things like mind control. They're very open to uh, being a part of things like this. And unfortunately, they found out the hard way and ended up losing a lot. Okay, but I did not consent to anybody taking my stuff. You know what I mean? I'm very disgusted by the people who thought it was okay to help themselves. Okay, and the mind control and their cognitive dissonance, like convincing themselves that this was okay. It's not okay. It's not legal. No religion does not supersede the law. It does not supersede the law. Okay, that is a delusion. So anyway, yes, if you're interested in me featuring your items on Facebook, do reach out to me as a friend on Facebook. Now, right now, I am over 5,000 friends on Facebook. But I'm getting to the point where if I feel like I want to be friends with somebody, I'm willing to eliminate some of these Facebook friends. I am willing to do that because I would like to be able to feature items that and also be inspired. You know what I mean? It would be kind of cool to feature maybe somebody who maybe write about somebody's story or whatever, to involve other people into my projects. So yeah, definitely connect with me on Facebook. Okay, I'm going to wrap up this video. Have a good day.